Episode 2, we have Wednesday, the 15th of January 2025. Hello, I'm Klaus Priebs. This is the second post on the Fajak Ahoy channel. My last post, episode 1, was about the 3 journeys of the Nordstern workshop. Of these 3 journeys, only the third would be or become a real journey, assuming that everything went as hoped. The first 2 journeys are actually just symbolic journeys, not real physical journeys, but they form the foundation for the subsequent journey. The first trip formed the political, the socio-ecological foundation for trip 2. Trip 2 is the product development of the Fajak. It should build on the basic ethical values of trip 1. Trip 3 should finally be then the test trip. I've come back to this again now because I probably always make a political reference in maybe all of my contributions, because for me inventing, developing, constructing and designing technical things is always an act of influencing our environment and fellow human beings, and usually even future generations. Developing and bringing new things into the world is therefore not just a technical, commercial act, but also always a form of political action. Today I want to give you a little more insight into the current state of development of the Fajak. That would be the content of journey number 2, so to speak, which began when I had the idea for it in 2005, almost 20 years ago now, and started the corresponding development project for it. But before we get into technical things, we first have to deal with the political part of this article. In keeping with the fact that today we are going to introduce the topic of Fajaks, I would like to briefly explain what my plan at the time was for bringing the Fajak into the world. At the time, I had various product ideas that I was tinkering around with, but I didn't really get any further because, once again, outsmarting the physics behind them turned out to be much more difficult than originally thought. And then, one fine day, I actually had the idea of the Velo Amphibium, abbreviated to VAMP. That's what I called it back then. I was totally excited about the idea of merging a kayak and a recumbent bike, and just thought, wow, how great is that? In terms of its level of innovation, okay, the idea is at best in the lower middle range. But it could be nice. That nice that I would really like to have one by myself, sooner rather than later. And above all, it should be technically, physically absolutely feasible, so there is no need to fear a job stopper from this side. And then the imagination starts to wander, and I imagine that there might even be so much demand for it later that I could start a company that deals with the development, production and distribution of such beautiful vehicles. Then I would finally be free from the unspectable yoke of slave-employee existence and could design the product and the company in such a way that it would be a win-win situation for everyone involved and the rest of the world. Oh, how nice that would be. But then it happens. The nightmare of every invader. Oh dear, you are not alone in the world. What if this beautiful idea for the future is taken away from you by someone else? Your idea, you had it yourself, so it belongs to you alone. You absolutely have to protect it before you invest a lot of time and money in developing it. Only then you can develop it further in peace, because no one else can take it away from you. So I was under a lot of pressure at that time to develop a patentable design concept for it as quickly as possible. And as it's often the case with things that are put together in a hurry, they are usually not the last word in wisdom. I'll explain to you briefly what I mean by that. One problem with the Fajak is that when transforming it from a kayak to a fully enclosed recumbent bike, that you then have to enlarge the interior to have enough space here in the footwell for pedaling. The idea at that time was to have the upper deck made by two shells on top of each other, which then could be opened to the left and to the right, and to create in this way then enough space in the interior here. This idea is here shown for a plastic kayak, and here the same idea is shown for a folding boat made with wooden frames and wooden stripes. Here this idea with the two shells is much more complicated to be realized. This principle I put together with some other ideas together in the first patent, which I submitted in July in 2005, and which was actually then granted nearly 3 years later. After I had submitted this patent, I was able to calmly develop and test this new protected ideas. Here you can see it realized in the version of a wooden folding boat. The upper picture shows the kayak mode, where the two deck shells are still lying on top of each other. And here you see these two deck shells opened for the velo mode, for the recumbent mode, with the enlarged interior here for pedaling. Unfortunately, I had then to realize that I was no longer happy with this idea of folding up the double shell upper deck, because it's much too complicated to realize. You can here see some of the parts which needs to be constructed and built then, and which safely would be very expensive to be produced. And the other problem which I couldn't solve at that time was that I need to realize here the connection of the stripes in the bow area. So a lot of problems. I was not happy with that. And a little later I had a new idea to enlarge the interior of the kayak, which I like much better. That means that this patent claim was already completely invalid before the patent had even been approved. With the second patent, which I initiated many years later, things went even worse. Almost all of the claims in the patent turned out to be outdated as the project progressed, because better ideas simply emerged that made the corresponding old patent claims superfluous. With each patent attempt, I had wasted an enormous amount of work, time and hundreds of euros, even thrown it away. And that was just for a German patent. An international patent would require many times more time and money. Now, of course, you could say that I should have simply waited longer to apply for a patent until the final definitive technical solutions had crystallized more clearly. However, with larger projects such as the Fajak, this can take quite a long time, stretching over many years. And if, as mentioned at the beginning, you give in to the spectre of theft of intellectual property, the patent system, then you have the following two problems over the potentially quite long development period. A. You are forced to develop in secret like Frankenstein, because any form of publication of the technical status makes subsequent patenting impossible. This means you are essentially condemned to be a basement dweller for the duration of the development, and any communication with the outside world about it must be avoided. But that's actually not a good thing, because communication with the outside world also represents a kind of productive, living connection to the world around you, which would usually only be beneficial to the project's progress. And B, throughout this entire development period, you also have to live with the fear that somewhere in the big wide world, someone else could be working on a solution to the same problem, and just before you are ready, have it protected by a patent. That would be the worst case scenario of the intellectual property protection philosophy. You have worked honestly and diligently on the project in secret for many years of your life, but someone else somewhere in the world has done it too, and was a little bit quicker, and now has the sole rights to an idea that was also your own at the beginning. This is just the beginning of the criticism of the patent system. I'm not yet at the point where I should completely demonize the patent system, but I believe that I can or even have to contribute further critical thoughts on the basic principle of the patent system at a later date. Almost 2 years ago, in the spring of 2023, I began to rethink things. I realized how little the intellectual property philosophy of the sponsorship system actually fits with the philosophy of the Nordstern workshop, which is supposed to stand for openness and mutual respect and not secrecy and recklessness. I decided to drop all further patent efforts for this project, and from now on to run it as an open project that turns towards the world and not away from it. Okay, then let's have a look now to the current technical status of the Fajak. Okay, when I started the development project at the beginning, 19 years ago, I decided to build small models. That seems to be better for me than creating virtual models on the computer, because these models these physical models you can hold in your hand, and that will be more interesting for investigation special things. First I started with these models made from wire, and I then said I need also a person for this model, and decided to take this wooden doll here, and for this wooden doll I need to prepare a little bit a bigger wire model, that is this here. Here I can put into the wooden model, the wooden doll, and now we can see the principle of a kayak. How is the structure of a kayak built? You can see, yes, I need to say that I orientated me at that time and also nowadays not to plastic kayaks, but only to kayaks which are made from wooden material. And there we have the version of the so-called folding kayaks. I like folding kayaks very much because they have the big advantage. You can put them together and transport them also in public traveling systems like buses or on railway. So I orientate me on folding boats, and here we can see how a folding boat in principle is constructed. We have stringers and ribs. And yeah, to make it more feasible, I have here an original folding kayak. Just a moment. Here you can see the typical folding kayak from nowadays, and you can see the principle is we have a lot of wooden stringers compared with wooden ribs. Here in front of this we have the bow, and everything is quite stable, that is good, but the disadvantage is that this structure is also quite heavy. It's quite heavy. And at the beginning of my development, a big aim was to make this, or try to make this structure even lightweighted, because we want to use this also as hull, as fuselage for the recumbent bike, to use this as bicycle for transport over land. And for that it is, I think, quite important to have the weight of the complete vehicle as light as possible. So after some years, so to say, I decided to go away from this principle with having stringers. This is here, the stringers are made from ash tree, that is quite heavy but very stable. I decided to go away from this principle, from stringers and ribs, and I decided to use another principle which I would like to show you now. Just a moment. Okay, and to explain now the new principle of the Fajak design, I have here an old tea box. This tea box is made very simple from cardboard material, and as you can imagine, this is very light weighted, and I can press and torque as much as I would like to do. Nothing happened with this box. This cardboard box is very stable, and if it is empty, filled only with air, it's very, very light weighted. And this principle I decided to use for the Fajak. The principle is also used in aircraft engineering, and there it is called the so-called bending torsion box. And here now, this is the new principle of the Fajak. I decided to use also boxes for the kayak. I decided to use 3 boxes. Here the end part of the kayak as a box, completely separated from the rest of the kayak, and it's a completely box, and so it would be very stable and also could be very light if the walls are only made from thin wood material. Then we have the middle part, and we have the bow box. The bow box also as a box, and like a pyramid, very lightweighted and stable. With the middle part I have a little bit more difficulties to realize the box principle, but also the middle part would exist out of boxes, 3 boxes. We have 2 boxes at the left and the right side. These boxes will be closed later on, and the third box will be the lower box. So we have 3 boxes, and that will make also the middle part very stable. You can see the left and right boxes are still open, but nevertheless the middle part is quite stable right now, very stable, and also relatively lightweighted. I need to have the middle part open because the third function should be that the occupant can lay down in the middle part to use the middle part of the Fajak for sleeping. He can then, the complete Fajak can be used then not only as a kayak and not only as a recumbent bike, but also as a tent for sleeping. So you don't need to have a tent with you then. That's the principle, and more technical things in the next February video.